Welcome along, I'm Stephen May, the solicitor and your business lawyer. I help small and medium-sized business owners sleep better by sorting all their legal problems. In this week's news, we've read that Next and Ocado are joining a growing list of employers who have decided not to pay sick pay to the great unwashed, aka unvaccinated members of staff. So can your company just make changes to sick pay for unvaccinated staff? I'll have a look at some of the legal issues. So The Guardian's reported that Next has become one of the first large UK retailers to cut sick pay for unvaccinated staff who have to isolate after coming into contact with someone who has COVID. However, staff who have not been vaccinated will still receive sick pay if they test positive for the virus. The first thing to note is that even if your company makes a similar decision, employees will always be entitled to statutory sick pay if they're off work. That's a minimum legal requirement. And there's a difference between company sick pay and a statutory sick pay. However, many people get company sick pay too, which is either a contractual or a discretionary right to be paid full or part pay, usually for a period of time following illness or sick leave. And what the companies that have made these decisions are saying is that if an employee has not been vaccinated and then have to isolate after coming into contact with someone with COVID, that the company should not have to pay for what is essentially the employee's decision to be unvaccinated. The current guidance, the government guidance of course, is that vaccinated people do not have to isolate if they come into contact with someone, only if they themselves show symptoms. But in my view, there is a legal risk with employers taking the approach that Next and Ocado are doing, and it's not something I'd suggest a business client does lightly. Thought needs to go into it. So let's have a look at some of the legal issues of treating vaccinated and unvaccinated people differently in the workplace. As mentioned in other videos and blogs on my website, there are in effect mandatory vaccination policies now coming into effect in care homes and CQC regulated health providers such as the NHS. However, as of January 2020, there is no mandatory vaccination law. The government, and indeed governments around the world, seem intent on pissing off unvaccinated people, to use the words of Emmanuel Macron, the French president. But can a company do the same? There are at least two types of claims that I think could arise with such potential actions. First up, potential breach of contract claims. So many companies have company sick pay as part of their contracts of employment. By law, a contract of employment must state sick pay provisions. And therefore, many employers' contracts state something along the lines of, after you've completed 6 months continuous service subject to your compliance with this agreement, you shall be entitled to receive sick pay from the company on the basis set out below. This does not affect your entitlement you may have to statutory sick pay for the same periods of sickness absence, although you may receive sick pay and the payment that you receive from the company shall be inclusive of sick pay. Sometimes that wording will say that sick pay, the company sick pay, is at the discretion of the company. Sometimes it says you may be eligible to receive sick pay in accordance with the company's sickness policy, and the policy may be something that's available in a staff handbook or on an intranet. The question then for us is there a contractual right to sick pay? So if the wording guarantees company sick pay, then it is a contractual right and cannot be unilaterally amended by the employer. If it is discretionary or reserves the right to be changed, then changes can of course be made. And this is key because if it is contractual and changes are made, employees will be able to bring breach of contract claims in the employment tribunal. Second element is potential discrimination claims. So some employment lawyers consider that vaccination policies may be discriminatory. Setting a policy which treats some people differently can amount to indirect discrimination under the Equality Act. While I might not agree with such policies in principle, I don't consider that it's likely a court will consider such policies to be discriminatory. There was a recent decision in Europe which held that mandatory vaccinations were reasonable, and given the public rhetoric, I think a judge would say that there was a legitimate aim to be overcome. However, there may be one or two people that can successfully argue at some point that taking a vaccine would be against their beliefs. There was a recent case in the Manchester Employment Tribunals, known only as X v Y, to protect the parties, in which it was held by the judge that a decision to avoid work and people for health and safety reasons did not amount to a philosophical belief under the discrimination legislation. In that case, the claimant's argument, a claimant's statement, said that quote, I took the decision not to return to the workplace on the grounds of health and safety. I had a reasonable and justifiable health and safety concern about the workplace surrounding COVID-19, and I was also very worried about increasing the spread of the virus. I had a genuine fear of getting the virus myself and a fear of passing it on to my partner, who was high risk of getting seriously unwell with COVID. So the judge decided that it was not a protected belief and dismissed her claim. And I think it's this kind of logic that we would see if other cases went further to an employment tribunal. So, while I urge caution to my employer clients, my view is that having different sick pay for vaccinated and unvaccinated staff is possible, if not somewhat problematic. But look, there's a real issue, I think, with having a two-tier system. And my opinion, non-legal for what it's worth, is that introducing a two-tier system is dangerous and a slippery slope that we as a free country should seek to avoid. And where does it all lead? If you don't exercise 3 times a week, you don't get sick pay. If you're overweight like me, and you get paid if you have a heart attack. What about if you smoke? Does a company turn around and say we're not covering you for cancer? Well, all those are unprotected characteristics in the Equality Act. Surely it goes against common morals to discriminate against these people. Or does it? What are your views? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.